Hi everyone, in this video, let us go through the lab for the Spark workloads on Amazon EkS. Let's get started. I have divided this lab into two parts. The first one is focusing on building the Spark data pipeline on EkS. So first we need to build the end-to-end open source stack for the Spark data pipeline, and then the second lab will be deploying the Spark jobs, Spark applications on this data plan that we have built. Okay, so there are two major labs. Now if we go into the first one, which is building the Spark data pipelines, then I have subdivided this into multiple subtopics. So the first one is building AWS code pipeline. We will build a code pipeline for the infrastructure, right? This is not for the application deployment. This is for the infrastructure code deployment. Okay. And then we will deploy the EkS cluster with add-ons. So using the code pipeline, we are going to deploy the EkS cluster using the Terraform templates. Okay. So then we will be deploying the observability stack on this EkS cluster using the same code pipeline. And then we'll be deploying the Apache Airflow stack within the EKS cluster. And finally, we will deploy the Spark operator and the Spark history server. So what we're going to do is step-by-step approach where we build the pipeline to deploy the infrastructure, and using the pipeline, we'll deploy the EKS cluster with some add-ons with VPCs, and then deploy the observability stack, Apache Airflow and Spark operator. So this is how we proceed step by step. So the first one is basically building the AWS code pipeline. So let us say we are deploying this in the AWS cloud, and the persona that we are referring to here is the platform or the DevOps engineers. Typically, they can use their own IDE for developing the code. I'm using Cloud9 in this case, and they will have some Terraform templates to build this pipeline, right? Now, the pipeline looks like this. It is the code pipeline, which is the AWS service, and within that, we will have the GitHub as the source of truth for the code. This is where we host the infrastructure as code templates. That is Terraform in this case. Instead of the GitHub, you can use code commit or any other repositories, but for this example, I'm using GitHub. And the next one is code build. So within the code build, we will be deploying the Terraform templates into the AWS cloud. So that means whatever the infrastructure that we want to deploy using the Terraform templates, the code build will basically process that. It will do Terraform init, apply, and init, plan, and apply, basically in that order, right? So that's what exactly we will do using the code pipeline. Okay. So now that we understand how the high level code pipeline looks like, let us get into the code and see how it looks like. So this is my README file, instructions file. So here we are building the AWS code pipeline. First, we need to configure the input values for the Terraform variables in the terraform.var files, right? So this is our terraform.tf vars. So here one of the variable is region, which is US East 1. The one of the name, which is a variable. I'm just using the data and EKS-spark, and the module directory is so and so. I'll explain what exactly it is. Then the GitHub repo owner is this. This is my personal handle, and the repo name is this, and the main branch is this. Right now, let's get into the code. The first one is the backend.tf. So here I'm using S3 as a backend for storing the Terraform state files. So this is my S3 folder, and within that, in this particular folder, I'm creating the state file. Based upon the directory structure for the various projects, I'm using the same directory structure for the Terraform state files as well. Okay. Now, if I go to the code pipeline.tf, this is where the main code resides. So first, I'm creating a S3 bucket, which is required for the code pipeline. It is simple configuration, a bucket name, and a few variables for the security, and encryption at rest with AES 256 algorithm. Then I'm also creating a SNS topic, which is also required for the code pipeline configuration. So these are the standard configuration. This is the code build CI project, which is the code build project. Now I'm using a module which is there in the modules folder. So what we need to understand is the first one is the role. Okay. Now the role which I'm assigning to this code build project is EkS workshop admin. Now we know that any IAM role is required to access AWS resources. But in this case, we are deploying the infrastructure into the cluster, right? So for example, using the code build, we will be building the EKS cluster and then deploying various add-ons, observability stock, and so on, right, within the EKS cluster. Now to do that, the code build has to have the required permission. So first it needs to have the permission to create the cluster and then access the cluster. So I'm using this role to create the cluster, and the same role I'll be using to access the cluster, because any IAM role that we use to create the cluster is automatically added to the system masters group, RBAC group, and so that's why I'm using this role, which will be same for creating as well as accessing it. Now there is a build spec path. This is the path to that build spec file. We will look that file in a minute. What exactly does it contain? And there's a S3 bucket that we created earlier, and there is variable called module directory, which I am passing through the variable section. Okay, let's first go through the build sec file, right? So that is available in a different folder. So yeah, so this is where the build spec file is there. This contains set of steps that we need to perform in the code build. So first I'm installing the Terraform 1.7.4 because I'm not using my local machine. Instead I'm using the code build to run this, right? So I need to install the Terraform binary there. And then I'll be doing the typical Terraform init, plan and apply. So it's a simple command, not complication at all. So after that I'll be using some Terraform output to get some variable values, and just updating that in a batch script. And it's a very simple script for the build spec file. One more thing we need to understand is the module directory, because I need to run this Terraform init, plan and apply commands from a directory where the Terraform files are there. So since I'm using GitHub to access my Terraform scripts, and I need to go to the right folder. Okay. So for example, if I look at the terraform.tf right? So this is the path. Okay. So why did I mention this path? So let me go to the GitHub and show you the exact path. So for example, this is my GitHub directory structures. So this is my top level folder. Inside IaaC Terraform, then I will be going to EKS, and then for example workloads, then Spark, and Spark data pipeline, and within that there is a infra and Terraform. So this is where all of my code resides for deploying the infrastructure, right? So this is the path I need to specify in my TF vars file, right? So the same thing I'm using here. I'm going to cd to that folder and running the Terraform commands. So this is important. There's only one configuration that we need to specify here. So apart from this, there is one more module that I'm using, which is the code pipeline, which is another module I'm referring to. It is there in my local folder, and I'm passing the variables to that folder module, the service role, the S3 bucket, SNS topic, and this is where I'll be deploying the number of stages. So there are two stages in the pipeline. One is the source and is the build. The source is referring to the GitHub repo that we saw. So this is GitHub, and so this is the name of the branch, the owner, and the all the details that we saw. right? And the auth token, I'm storing that in the secret manager in a secure fashion, and I'm using that token from the secret manager using this data block. Okay, so instead of hard coding that, I'm directly accessing this from the secret manager, the security token for the GitHub. Next, the build stage will have the code build project that we saw earlier, and this is the code build project, and that's it. So I have some data blocks to access the secret from the secret manager. I've already copied the GitHub access token into my secret manager service and created one secret there, and I'm just accessing that. Okay, and I need to specify the proper name using the secret name here, right? So if you go to tf vars, this is my um, you know GitHub repo name. The same thing I'm using here also, right? GitHub secret token name. So if I go to the variable section, you will see uh, different different variables, and for this particular GitHub token secret name, I am using this name, and this is already configured there. I'm using the same thing for this project. Okay, so this is how the code pipeline.tf looks like. Apart from that, if you go to the main.tf, there is nothing much here, just the provider and the data. Then variables.tf is just only the AWS region, and version.tf is just the Terraform versions and the modules and providers, right? So this is quite simple. Now let us first go to the folder and let's do Terraform init. TI stands for Terraform init. So let me run this. Now I will run Terraform plan. TP stands for Terraform plan. So it will take some time. So I'll just take a pause. So Terraform plan completed. So then I will run Terraform apply with auto approve TAA. These are the aliases I created in my bash profile, and it may take some time. I'll just take a pause again to run this command. So the Terraform apply completed. So as you see, there are some outputs from this module. So code pipeline name is this, the S3 bucket name is this, and the code build project name is this. So if I go to console and see that the code build project, so this is the code build hyphen do EkS data and EkS hyphen spark. This is the code build project. And if I go to the pipeline, this is the pipeline is created. So there are two stages in the pipeline. One is the source. The source is referring to the GitHub. So if you open this, it is pointing to the latest commit, and so it is completed. So it is green, and then it is the next step is basically the build, right? So the build is where we deploy the Terraform templates into the AWS infrastructure. So we will discuss all of this detail in the next lab, but initially this is important to understand that we created a pipeline with only two stages to deploy the infrastructure. Normally we use the pipeline to deploy the applications into the cluster, but this is a pipeline for the infrastructure, right? So we can use the code, the infrastructure as a code even to deploy the infrastructure, and we can automate that using the um, code pipeline, because just like we use the GitHub for the application code, we can also use the GitHub for infrastructure as a code. That's where we can get all the benefits of the source control systems, right? So that's how we decided to use the code pipeline in this case. Okay.